Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Shaddoll artifact deck profiles. This is a really interesting concept for a deck that I really like to play around with as a control variant to Shaddolls, because it is really awesome to be able to like artifact scythe your opponent, while also having some of the control Shaddolls on your side of the field, like Shaddoll Window, which is really awesome to go against your opponent. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can come part of notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name searched for every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, or even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon along with test hands. So without further ado guys, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing double Artifact Scythe. So Artifact Scythe is probably the most important card in the entire deck, along with Artifact Sanctum. And what this card does is you can set this card from your hand, your spell and trap card zone, as a spell card, which is pretty neat for this deck. And then during your opponent's turn, if this set card in your spell and trap card zone is destroyed, then you can special summon this card. And if this card is special summoned, during your opponent's turn, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, which is a great ability to just blanket your opponent where they can't special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, especially when you activate something like Artifact Sanctum that they usually don't run a counter to except for Ash Blossom, and then you hit them with this card right off the bat. We then play a single copy of Artifact Moraltac. Moraltac, upon summon, can pop a face-up card your opponent controls, and it works pretty much the same way as all the other artifact cards, but this card is a fantastic one-of in the deck that you sometimes use as actually material for Construct. We then play for these Shaddolls. We're going to be playing 2 copies of Windy. Windy's pretty good as a 2-of. I don't feel like I need 3. And what this card does is all of your Shaddoll monsters share the same ability, that you can only get one or the other of their effects during each turn, and you can only activate one of the effects per turn as well. They're hard ones per turns of either or effect, which is pretty good to be able to kind of balance the card. So basically what this card does is if you flip her face up, then you get special summon a Shaddoll monster from your deck in face up or face down defense position, except another copy of yourself. And if she's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon one Shaddoll monster from your deck in face down defense position, except another copy of yourself, which is pretty good as well. We then play a single copy of Ariel. Ariel has the ability that if she's flipped face up, you can target one of your banished Shaddoll monsters and special summon it in face up or face down defense. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target 3 cards in the graveyards and banish them. We then play a single copy of the new Hell Shaddoll Fusion Hollow, or Hell Shaddoll Hollow. This card is really cool in this deck. I really like the interactions that this deck card has in this deck, because it has the ability that you can target, if it's flip face up, you can target a monster your opponent controls and send one Shaddoll monster with the same attribute from your extra deck to the graveyard, and if you do, banish that monster. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you get to send send cards off the top of your deck equal to the different attributes that you currently have on the field, and then you can only use its effects, each effect of this card, once per turn, and only once that turn, which is pretty cool to be able to use the effects, to be able to only use one effect because it balances all your Shaddolls, like I said earlier. We then play a single copy of Neff Shaddoll Genius. Neff Shaddoll Genius is pretty cool. It's not as good as Hell Shaddoll in my opinion in this build, because Hell Shaddoll can work a lot better because you have a lot of different attributes in the extra deck. And what this card does is when it's flip face up, you can target one Shaddoll. It's unaffected by every other effect by its own. And if it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target an effect monster on the field, and neither player can activate that target's effects on the field this turn. For the regular Shaddolls that we play that are not multi-attributes, you're playing a single copy of Beast. Beast has the ability that if it's flip face up, you draw 2 and discard 1. If it's sent to the graveyard, you draw a card, which is pretty good. If you play a single copy of Dragon, Dragon is really cool because if it's flip face up, you get to target 1 card your opponent controls, return it to the hand, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to pop a spell or trap, which is also a really good effect just to pop those additional spells and traps against your opponent, because sometimes you need to just have an out to like a spell or trap against them, and this card has that taken care of. We then play 2 copies of Shaddoll Squamata. Squamata is pretty cool too, because if it's sent to the graveyard, you get to send another copy of a Shaddoll to the graveyard, and if it's flip face up, you get to target a monster on the field, or a card on the field, a monster on the field, and destroy it. 1 copy of Hedgehog. Hedgehog's kind of the searcher, but kind of a little bit of a slow searcher because it is a flip effect, because if it's flip face up, you get to add a Shaddoll spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and if it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you get to add a Shaddoll monster from your deck to your hand. 1 copy of Falco. Falco, if it's flip face up, you get to target 1 Shaddoll monster in the graveyard, except another copy of itself, and special summon in face down defense. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon this card in face down defense, which is also a great effect for this card. I like to play it as one of. A lot of people opt to just not play this card, but I love it as a 1-of in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Mathematician. Mathematician, when it's normal summon, you can send a level 4 or lower monster from your deck to the graveyard, which is pretty much any of your Shaddoll monsters, because if you send a copy of Squamata off of this effect, you're going to get to send any of your other Shaddoll monsters that you need off of this card as well, which is pretty nice. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom because it just stops your opponent from touching the deck, which is really cool. It just deals with all those shenanigans that they might be trying to go against you with. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial is really good because it basically says, hey, activate any of your Shaddoll monsters' effects in this deck by sending them to the graveyard, which is really cool. We then play 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion. Shaddoll Fusion is pretty good because it has the ability that you can fusion summon 1 Shaddoll Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters in your hand or field as fusion material, and if your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, you can also use monsters from your deck as well, which is insanely overpowered, which is really, really good as a card. I love Shaddoll Fusion in this deck. I love Shaddoll Fusion at any deck that I throw it into because Shaddolls are just like one of my favorite engines that you can use in a deck at any given time. I played 3 copies of El Shaddoll Fusion, which is just a quick play, basically a quick play fusion spell. It's really good as a 3-of in here because there's so many times and so many opportunities to fusion summon in this deck, and both of these are hard once per turn. So playing these at 3 each is really the optimal number because it's going to get you at least 1 to 2 Shaddoll Fusion monsters on your side of the field if you draw both of them. We then play 3 copies of Super Polymerization because it is a Shaddoll deck and you play a lot of different attributes in the extra deck and in the main deck to get you into a lot of your different Shaddoll monsters. And this card is just so good to be able to deal with your opponent's Dragoons and any card that they just throw against you that you want to Super Poly away, which is really nice. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. Now, I do play quite a few traps in this deck, so bear with me. So we're going to be playing 3 copies of Trap Trick because it basically says you send a copy of a trap, or you banish a copy of a normal trap from your deck, and then you get to send, or you get to set a copy of the same trap that you just sent or banished to your side of the field. So for example, if I have an Artifact Sanctum in my deck, I can banish that card and then set an additional copy from my deck face down, which is really nice, but I can only activate 1 trap for the rest of the turn, which is a really good card effect just to be able to get you additional traps on your side of the field and basically play 6 of every trap in the deck, which is really cool that you play it more than, or you play it 3. We then play 3 copies of Artifact Sanctum. Artifact Sanctum is ridiculous in this deck because it gives you basically a free copy of Scythe during your opponent's turn, because you can special summon an artifact from your deck and you can only activate 1 Artifact Sanctum per turn, and you cannot conduct your battle phase a turn you activate this effect, but we're activating it during our opponent's turn, so it doesn't matter. And then it has the ability also that if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can target a card on the field and destroy it. So even if your opponent deals with this card and pops it, they're still going to lose something, so this card is still really, really powerful. We then play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence because Infinite Impermanence is also a Trap Trick target, which is really nice, and it's an additional hand trap for the deck. And then we play a single copy of Shaddoll Incarnation because of the aerial combo with Construct, and it's just really, really good in this deck to be able to go into, because using this card by sending it with Construct to the graveyard is really good. Even if you hard draw this card is good 1-up because you get to target a Shaddoll monster in your graveyard and special summon it in face up or face down defense. And then also you can banish a Shaddoll and this card from your graveyard to be able to flip one of your monsters from face up to or face down defense position to the opposite position, which is pretty good. We then play a single copy of Schism. Schism is also insanely good. It's basically a Miracle Fusion for Shaddolls and has the ability that during your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 Shaddoll monster from your extra deck by banishing the materials from your graveyard or your field, but it can't attack directly. And then you can send 1 monster your opponent, you can send to your graveyard 1 monster your opponent controls with the same attribute as the fusion summon monster, which is really good because the majority of things in this game are light and dark. And that's usually what we're going to actually summon with this card. So that's it for the traps, guys. Let's get into the extra deck because that's it for the main deck as well. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Shaddoll Winda. Basically, it locks your opponent down where they can only special summon, and you can only special summon once per turn, which is really, really good for us and really bad for our opponent. It also has the ability that this card cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and when this card is sent to the graveyard, then you get to add 1 Shaddoll spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand. We then play 2 copies of Construct, which if it battles a special summon monster, you're going to immediately destroy that monster, which is a fantastic effect. And it also has the ability that if if this card is fusion summon, you get to send a Shaddoll card from your deck to the graveyard, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to add a Shaddoll spell or trap from your graveyard back to your hand. We then play a single copy of a Pokelone, which takes 2 monsters that are different attributes to summon this that are Shaddolls. And if this card is fusion summon, it cannot be destroyed by battle, and also has the ability to, if this card is special summon, you can target one face-up card on the field and negate it. Or if this card is sent to the graveyard, then you get to add a Shaddoll spell or trap, or add a Shaddoll card from your deck or graveyard to your hand, and then you discard a card, which is pretty good. I play a single copy of Shikanaga as well. Shikanaga is pretty good because Shikanaga has like 4 targets in the deck that you can use that are Earth to go into this card, and it just negates monster effects, which is really, really good because it has the ability that when monster special summon activates its effect, well, you have a Shaddoll card in your hand, you can negate the activation of you destroy that monster, and then send a Shaddoll monster from your hand to the graveyard. Use each effect of this card once per turn, so it's a really good effect just to be able to negate monster effects. Since I'm playing the new Shaddoll Hollow, I really wanted to play Greista because I thought Greista would be really good in this deck, and it actually has turned out to be pretty good. Because if you have Greista and Winda on your side of the field, you can kind of control what your opponent's going to special summon, which is pretty nice. And what it does basically is it negates special summons the way that your copy of Shikanaga negates monster effects. This card basically just negates the summons of monsters as well, which is really good. We then play for our last card in the fusion area. We're going to be playing a single copy of Starving Venom. Starving Venom is just here as a super poly target essentially, and it's just really for that. Like, you just rarely summon it unless you're going to like get rid of a copy of Dragoons against your opponent, but it's here just in case you need it. But then for the other monsters in the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Durandal because Durandal is pretty good as a XZ monster, and it has the ability that when it's activated, or when a monster effect is activated, or when a normal spell or trap card is activated, you can detach material. The activated effect becomes destroy a spell or trap your opponent controls. And you can detach material in this card, and each player's hand, or each player shuffles their entire hand in the deck and then draws the same number of cards that they shuffled into, which can really mess up your opponent. And this card is just really, really good in decks that you can make it in. One copy of Access Code, which you can change out for Boral Sword. I did debate actually changing it out for Boral Sword in this extra deck because I'm only playing 3 different attributes or 3 different typings. So, and you're not going to summon all of them in a single game. So this card almost was Boral Sword, so you can change it out for that if you want to, or Boral Load. We then play a single copy of Unicorn because it pops, or it spins stuff, which is really good. One copy of Artifact Dagda because it works really good with your artifact engine. IP Mask Granite to actually go into your copy of Unicorn. Cross Sheet because it's a fusion deck, and a single copy of Anaconda because it's a fusion deck, and it actually works really good in this deck to be able to fusion summon into your other cards by sending those fusion spells from your deck to the graveyard. So these are really good in the deck, and this is actually like my favorite way to play this extra deck. You could, if you wanted to, and you don't feel like you're going to summon the Greista, you could drop the Greista if you wanted to for maybe another, like a Phoenix if you wanted to play Phoenix, and it would get you 4 different attributes in the extra deck that are linked monsters, and then it would really, really justify the access code because you'd have Dark, Earth, Light, and Fire, which would be pretty cool. So you can drop and interchange this out if you want to, or the Shikanaga. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play with. I would highly recommend if you guys are going to try out a Shaddoll deck. This is a relatively budget version of it, opposed to the Invoked Dogmatica version. This is like, if you're going to go that route, you can. You can even drop the Schism if you want to drop the Schism. If you're just trying to like make a budget version of this deck, you can change out some of the cards like your Infinite Impermanences and stuff like that to make it a little bit more budget. And you guys can comment those down below, and I will reply. I'll try and reply to the comments that ask me what to change them out with. So anyways, guys, this is Dark Armed Duels. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below. And we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.